Hi guys, welcome to Bear Hobbies. My name's Mark. I'm going to be presenting a series of videos building a Tamiya T-55. We're going to be using the T-55 as the base kit, but we've also added in lots and lots of detail. Now unfortunately I haven't got the first videos that explain that process, but I have got some still photos that you can have a look at, and what we're going to be continuing on with is actually weathering and painting the hull of this T-55. I'm actually here for you guys so that you can ask questions, so you can learn, and also it's for me as well to learn how to present it to you guys and see if you enjoy the content, and to share the hobby with you, because that's the most important thing. So I've been in Kuwait for the last 4 years, been doing lots of building, and you'll see in the next series of clips, you're going to see the weathering, and then we're going to leave Kuwait and we're continuing on in England.
So we're out here making the most out of these natural resources to add a special form of realism to this diorama. What I'm actually doing is going to collect some sand from this lot here, and that's going to be part of the interior effects for the tank. Obviously it could use a lot of pigment, but that's going to be kind of expensive, so why not make the use of this, and I'm just going to show you how I'm going to do that. Okay, so all I've been doing is basically got a container and one of these little disposable plastic balls, and what I've been doing is scraping away at the surface to try and get the finest sand that I can get, and then put this out of the container as somebody's turned up, and then just scoop inside there, and I'm going to show you what I'm going to do with that next indoors.
Okay, quite a simple start. All we're going to do is filter this sand. There's lots of lumps and bumps and big pieces of debris inside there. And using a sieve, we're just going to go through, separate all this out, shake that through. Everything that's too big, we can get rid of. And now we've got some fairly nice, fine sand to use for the next step. And go straight into that. Okay, this is what we're going to be using to add the sand into the hull. You use a spoon, sort of lift out and distribute the sand. Pigment fixer, you can use water and white glue, and it doesn't need to be by MIG, it can be by anybody else. And I'm sure there's some other methods to do that. We're going to use this pigment fixer to actually fix the sand. Use a pipette to apply it, and also a brush. This is usually my pigment application brush, to sort of push some of the sand into the crevices, etc. And let's get on with doing that right now. So what we'll do is we'll start by, first of all, taking the pigment fixer and then applying some all around the interior, just to give it something that's going to stick to. We're going to need that. Okay, so here we go, just sprinkle it in. There we go. You can see how that's just gone in there, okay? Now, when it gets dry, that's the point there that we're going to add some more fixer. And we're going to let this dry in layers so that it's fairly solid. We don't want to be losing all this sand. Okay, you can see how that's gone in there. we're not going to go too crazy with this. We want the appearance of sand in there, but we don't need to fill it right up to the top. We just need to show that effect. I'll place the engine bay in. The engine bay is going to get a lot less. And also that should really be fixed in, so I'll probably do that off camera. But let's add in a bit more sand inside here. I want it to appear sort of stacked up against the sort of side walls, and then a little bit less towards the centre, and that's probably where, let's try that now, to sort of create a mound of it. We'll use the brush, sort of push it a little bit into these areas here, and again let's take some more pigment fixer to make sure that it all gets turned down. So we've already got quite a good base of sand in there on top of the rust. It's going to be quite an interesting effect. And that's done. Of course, using real Kuwait sand as well, you can't get any better than that. So I'll carry on and then show you how this looks. One point to note, of course, is with the fixer as well, it does take a long time to dry. I think really you're looking at about 12 hours really. So we won't go any further than that for now. We'll let that dry out, leave it a few hours, let that settle down, and then we'll add the next layer, because we don't really want to make too many. We don't want to end up in a position where we've got too much sand and we can't remove it. So I'll continue with that and see you soon. Okay guys, we've let the sand dry for about 24 hours now. It's pretty solid inside there, as you can see. And also I've got the engine bay in a position as well, and this also has, you know, a bit of sand. You can see this, I built it up a little bit inside that corner there for a nice effect. I'm just going to show you how it looks with the top of the hull on, and I quite like the depth that's there. You can see that there's a build up of the sand. It looks about the right sort of amount that I would add in. I like it. It's enough for me. Now, the other thing is though that the sand is, even though we did get quite a fine grain, we're going to use pigments for the next stage to supplement the sand that was added before, and I'm just going to show you what I have here. I've got a mixture of various pigments, you know, the live colours, MIG ones, you know, any sort of dirt coloured pigments. And this time we're going to use a soft brush for the application, and we're going to use the pigment fixer once again. But really I find the best way to apply this is by using a soft brush and sort of just like sprinkling it on top, and we're just going to get quite a nice coverage on top. Tap it on, etc. We're going to get a lot of finer grain. Also, we're going to get some different tones as well. There's I don't know, maybe about 4 or 5 different pigment combos of colours on here at the moment, so I've got quite a nice mix. I haven't used that many darks. I like the sort of dirty, sandy look as well. And this is, I think the vehicle's going to be in a desert sort of environment. But this sort of dusty soil, the generic dusty soil, is my preference. And we're just sort of adding it in there. You can see I'm loosely tapping it on, using this, just flicking it on, letting it build up. All different areas. Let's keep going. Get a nice amount of coverage on here. Oh, we've got a big clump there. Why not? some more in the engine bay. There we can go, I can see quite a lot of different variety inside there now. And once again, we'll use some pigment fixer. Same application as what we do with the sand. Use the pipette, draw some liquid out, add it in, and saturate the whole area. Like I mentioned, when we added the sand, we left it for about 24 hours. We're going to do the same again. On here, just add it all around, all the different areas. It's fine. It doesn't dry, glossy, or there's no problems at all with it. Just make sure everything gets covered with the liquid. And I'm going to show you it again, just quickly. Place it on top. Okay, so now I've got quite a lot of the finer pigments, which is going to accentuate the effects of fine sand filling up this tank hole. And we're going to sprinkle just a little bit more inside, just on top, just in a few areas. I like it when it goes up against the sidewall and you get these realistic sort of deposits. Let's put a bit more in the engine bay. Okay, and we're going to check this out again after 24 hours. And okay, we're going to talk about weathering now. This T-55 burnt out Hulk, and I'm going to discuss. Firstly, there's many ways that this can be done. There's quite a few different paints, proprietary products, and pastels, etc., pigments. Many different ways to do this. Yeah, even with airbrush, you can achieve the weathering effect. So principally, you're going to see from myself, I tend to use oil paints. And the reason I do is that they're very versatile and I can mix them in different quantities and they mix together. And then my other preference is from proprietary products such as mig-ammo's range. And I've got a few here that I've used previously. And there's even a set here, a rusty vehicle set, that contains a couple of different tones inside one pack. They call it a tracks wash, a light rust wash, and a streaking rust effect. Don't get too misled with the description, as in tracks wash is only for tracks. It's not. They're just different tones of a rusty brown, really. This is a very traditional sort of brown. This is really sort of my favourite for a sort of deep, grimy sort of rust, and that's really what we're going to be using today. And another point to note with these products is that they can be used out of the bottle simply by dipping your brush in and applying, or they can also be actually diluted down using turpentines, thinners. And in this case, we're going to dilute it down a little bit. So we're going to take a mixture here and add some, in this case, mig thinner, so it's an enamel thinner. And I'll just show you how they do go together quite well. And you can get a more liquid wash, freer flowing, more diluted, etc. And just to explain as well, what we've got inside, we want to accentuate now a combination of different effects combining with the pigments. So even it is quite dark actually, this solution, but I'm going to run the wash basically throughout all the surfaces. Quite a heavy application really, and I want it to deliberately drip down and combine with the pigment to give that sort of unique effect of where oil, grime and carbonized metal is sort of combined with natural elements, and it really gels it all together. And at the same time as well, we're going to apply washes to some of the individual components as well that are affected, so we're going to be quite nice liberal application. And then also we're going to add some other staining effects quite soon using this product as well to create even more grime in this this burnt out hull. And I've got on the engine as well, we can go straight on, apply the wash. Throw out. I'm just going to proceed with this all the way through. I'm going to show you also the turret can have some. This is going to be. I might add some sand effects inside here, but probably not. Maybe just a little light dust coating. But we're also going to touch the wash over some of the components on this interior. And then of course this all needs to be repainted on the outside. I need to very carefully blend the join of these two parts, as it's going to be quite visible, as you see later on, which is going to be interesting sort of display for you guys. So let's keep on working that wash throughout all the areas. Quite a nice coating on different areas. And again, it helps also fix that pigment on as well. Now, I'll do a few more areas inside here, the sort of random ones, just random touches, just into the wash. And now let's work on some engine oil. Another way to do this is to get to mix a black and brown oil paint together. If we can get this open. Been quite a while since I've used this one, I think. There we go. Okay, this is quite a glossy. I'm going to show you here. A toothpick. It's quite glossy actually. Let's add some random stains right into the sand itself, onto the engine, transmission. Better move that out of the way. Let's see if you can see what's going on there. Just dabs. So this might be oil that's seeped in from elsewhere, polluted in the sand. In any case, we're going to get a nice random sort of like oil spillage into all that dirt and dust and the burnt out carcass, of course. Okay, now I'll show you as well here. A little bit too heavy really with that application, so I'm just going to go straight on with some thinner, and just soak it down to make it run out, and then blend it a little bit down there. There we go. Okay, so once again we're going to leave this to dry, and really that's going to conclude the interior weathering for this tank hull. I'm going to take some photos to show you guys how it looks just prior to sealing up the top of the hull, but I hope it's of some interest and some use as and we'll carry on with the next steps as well. Okay, I'm going to show you where we've got up to on this at the moment. The hull top's been cemented on to the lower hull, quite obviously. And I used liquid glue to do that. There's some gaps that appear here when I remove the molded on fenders from the Tamiya kit. And as you see when we do this diorama, we're going to use some metal fenders, photo etch fenders from a company called airbrush. This is one of 3 photo etch sets that's being used on this model. Now, the instructions will tell you to template the hull, and then there was small areas, little pins to fix onto the side so it was at the right level. I don't use that method. I get rid of the little pins. What I do is at that join position there, I've put in some plastic card, thin strips, cut off like so, and then cemented into the gap there and there also. And what this does, it allows me very easily to actually align up the fenders into the right position, and really much better than anything is the way that they're really nicely supported. When the super glue goes on, or we might use a resin, epoxy adhesive, there's enough purchase there to get these fenders to sit quite nicely against the hull. This is going to serve as a marker now for another weathering effect that we're going to add at this stage, and it's I suppose we call it a pre-weathering effect. What we're going to be doing is using this product from Tamiya. I've used it for many years. They produce a grass one. This is a grit effect and also a soil. The grass one has little fibres in it to represent grass. The grit and the soil are very similar, except for the colour. The colour is not important for us. What I like about this product is the way that it sticks to the model. Very sorry there guys, lost a little bit in the video for one reason or another, but I'm just going to show you how this is done. I've actually already applied this, and what we've done is used a sort of stippling brush, a cut off soft brush, go straight into the bottle, and then just basically stipple on this product like so. And really what we're doing, I've only gone up to this sort of line that is the bottom, the underneath of the fenders on both sides, and then a little bit of the lower hull at the front and the rear. And the reason it's going to become apparent later on why we've really done this, but this product gives a very nice texture and grip for further weathering effects, and that's really why we're doing that. And the stippling motion affects like lots of little undulations and areas where we can add pigments and very similar effects that we did on the interior that will complement the underneath of the tank, the running gear, etc. And we'll probably also, when we attach the metal fenders, we might after we do that, we might apply the stippling once again to the underneath of the fenders as well, just to create more weather under there. So I'm going to clean off this brush in some water and then we'll resume. Hi guys, just a few updates I've done off of camera. Most obvious one you can see is that the fenders, the big part of the fenders have now been attached to the hull. And these plastic portions, they fill up the gap there between where the trimmed off original Tamiya fender was, and that's been all tidied up around there. I'm just going to show you something. You can see underneath it, you can see that plastic strip that provided the sort of joining mating surface, and really it was just a case of just using some super glue, running a smear down there, holding on, and likewise on the other side. And you might have noticed that the fenders themselves are a little bit blackened, and that's because prior to them being bent into position, they were actually annealed using a small lighter like this. We just applied it onto here. What we're going to do now is we're going to start deforming a bit of this fender. Just going to sort of nip it a little bit, crunch it. Use these Tamiya photo etch pliers. I just find them really handy for this sort of thing. You can sort of see that I'm deforming these areas. Hey guys, we're going to go over what I've been doing off the camera, and after we applied those pigments, we actually went over the pigments with the application of this Mr. Hobby mahogany surfacer. So it's a brown primer paint. Yeah, gone straight on top of the pigments that we applied yesterday. You can still see the pigments are still there. They're more ground in now. They're quite solid on there. You can see all the effects are built up into these areas down here where I wanted them. They're pretty solid. Now we're going to add a lighter tone of pigments on top of that. We're using this mig-pigments dry mod. I put a little bit out here. Use the stippling action once again, and off we go. Yeah, so you can see the contrast immediately. Very light. We won't do it any, there's no point really hitting these other surfaces. I just want to hit this side portion, the front a little bit, get a little bit there. Okay, seem quite generous with the pigments. Do like using them. Okay, not bad. They stick on pretty well. And now, except for the rear hole here, get all that in there, that's it. Okay, so now this is what we've got. We've got light, dark, darker again. This light bit in the front, let's blend it a little bit. Bring it out. Show you that bit. Okay, so quite interesting. And now what I like to call the piece de la resistance, or whatever you want to, or it's like the final effect to add here. And what we're going to do is we're going to use this Trax wash, and we're going to apply it under these areas, but we're going to use the airbrush, so I'm going to show you how that's done now. Okay, as usual, we're going to pour this neat into the, so there's no diluting it. Check the flow. It's like brown paint, of course it is. And now we're going to go into these areas right underneath. Some shadows, bit of streaks. Again here. A little bit there as well. Front area. And repeat on this side.